Original video animation, never aired on TV but released via DVD, Blu-ray, and of course VHS. There's so many fantastic OVA out there that you probably already know, like Fooly Cooly or Legend of the Galactic Heroes, but today I want to focus on the ones that were lost to time, or at the very least aren't all that discussed these days in casual conversation. Here are 10 of the best old and obscure OVA. In space, no one can hear you disappoint your parents. Iria is an apprentice hunter who's eager to make a name for herself. She tags along with her brother on a mission that turns out to be more than what they bargained for. It's up to Iria and her friends to defeat an immortal space monster, all while trying to uncover the truth behind what's really going on. Visually, Iria looks great, and the show's alright too. The Oriental future aesthetic might be a new favorite of mine. Each character has something unique about them, and the carefully designed ships and cities really bring the art to life. The fights look great and play out in fun and creative ways, with all the gadgets and gizmos used by the different hunters. Pretty reminiscent of Outlaw Star if you've seen that one. It's also a joy to see a new weapon, robot, or vehicle with every episode. Let it be known that Iria is a delightful main character and might just be one of my new favorite 90s girls. She's strong and somewhat reckless, but not an obnoxious jerk who never listens to the people trying to help her. Also tomboy. The rest of the cast are pretty solid too, even the minor characters, and Zeiram works wonderfully as this unstoppable force of devastation that is equal parts cool and creepy. If you like sci-fi adventures and wish Metroid had an anime, then this is probably the OVA for you.
女を見てくれだけで判断なさってはいけませんわ、中佐。
そうですな。では。
CSGO, but with women. Mariko Rosebank leads an all-female squad of special forces called CAT and stops the bad guys one TikTok dance at a time. Don't let the modern trope of having an all-female cast cover for a garbage film keep you from checking out this one. Desert Rose is a solid counterterrorism story with some good action and likable characters. The leaders of the Western world are having a meeting in the Swiss Alps to determine how to spend all their Rothschild money. In order to safeguard the event, no male guards are allowed on the premises so that the terrorist won't be able to sneak in with the security detail. Because as we all know, despite being only 50% of the population, men make up. Anyways, this is the ideal job for our lovely lady killers who have to figure out the terrorist plan and protect the diplomats no matter what. The animation isn't anything special for the early 90s, but it goes hard when it needs to. The character designs, on the other hand, take a little getting used to. Big eyes and long faces. I can't say I'm the biggest fan of this look, but I don't hate it either. Then there's the tone. It's usually pretty fun and easygoing, but at times, it can get a little dark. This OVA feels like just another day in the life of Cat. It would have been cool to see a few more missions and learn about the other members, but oh well. Final thoughts? Love women, hate terrorists. Simple as. It's the future, and country music is all but extinct. But Kelly McCannon is a girl with a dream to correct Taylor Swift's greatest sin. She boards a shuttle to Mars and spreads that southern sound throughout the solar system. Turns out she's a robot. Is this an indictment of the absolute state of modern country music? Yes. But anyways, the real focus of the story is this cop from the Windy City, Ross Syllabus, and his new partner in protecting and serving, Naomi Armitage. There's been a string of murders on Mars, and the day will have to be saved by this unlikely pairing of a soft-spoken big guy and an energetic, free spirit.
Armitage,
You whore!
It's a pretty standard good cop, bad cop detective story, but with a cyberpunk coat of paint. The fights are pretty good and the soundtrack equally so. I don't want to spoil too much of the conspiracy surrounding the murders, but I will say it prompts some questions about humanity and androids. Mars is filled with robots that have gone through several iterations, and by the time Syllabus reports for duty, the new version of robots called Thirds have been released into the world and more or less blend in with human society. There's also also a fair amount of political intrigue that's introduced about halfway through concerning Mars and its relationship with Earth. There's a lot of great ideas that get introduced, but unfortunately with only 4 episodes, you can only tackle so much before everything starts to feel shallow or undercooked. We got robots who look almost indistinguishable from normal people, religion being eroded by science, a difference in ideology between Earth and Mars. It's a lot, and I can't say each topic was explored to my heart's content. But regardless, Syllabus is a bro, and Don Claude is a meme. I love him. If you want more cyberpunk after watching Cyberpunk, and you've already seen Ghost in the Shell, then, well, here's your next Friday night. We all know you're not busy. A fantasy anime that isn't an isekai? Yeah, I know Record of the Lodoss War isn't all that obscure, but it's still old and definitely worth highlighting. Plus, I doubt this new generation knows about this one. Any anime fan born after 2003 can't appreciate the classics. All they know is Demon Slayer, hype they show, ship, be anime sexual, simp for VTuber, and porn addiction. Parn is an up-and-coming adventurer who joins up with the Fellowship of the Ring to defeat female Sauron and save the land of Lodoss. I'm not dunking on the show, by the way. This is a compliment. Like Tolkien's works, Lodoss is a story set in a fantasy world that takes itself seriously. I loved hearing about the origins of this dreadful continent filled with dragons and monsters and magic. It's great. Yeah, the expected tropes still show up here and there. You can't have an elf and a dwarf and not include a rivalry rooted in racism. But where Lodoss really shines is in the chemistry of the cast. Parn and Deedlit are adorable, and the ballroom dance where the stunning she-elf attempts to woo the warrior who is more preoccupied with his new father figure is probably the best scene in the entire series. That being said, episode 8 is where Best Girl shows up. The whole thing may only be 13 episodes, but you get a real sense of most of the characters, even the villains. While I do like the overall look of the OVA, I will say it can look a little cheap at times, especially towards the end. The opening promises expressive dragons fully animated to convey their grandeur. But then one of the big boys shows up and it's just a static image sliding across the screen. It has its moments that remind you this is a Madhouse production, but I guess that cuts both ways, doesn't it? Even still, I'd say it's worth a watch. There is a sequel TV series that covers some of the same events as the OVA while adding new content, but we're only talking about OVAs this time around, and also I haven't seen it. Someone tell me if I should.
You will die!
A Karate Kid's counterpart from Hell shows up in the real world because he's cosplaying as King, and now the two combine to fight other demons and maybe conquer the world or something. Is this anime good?
My, how glorious!
No. Do I recommend it?
What? A teddy bear?
Absolutely. Battle Royale High School is the definitive trashy 80s OVA, filled with laughable levels of gore and profanity packaged into a story that makes less sense the more it unfolds. Demons fighting fairies and the time-space police. I mean, it's got everything you could want. I'd even put the English dub up there with Devilman and Cyber City.
Reveal yourself!
Hold it. I was only trying to kick a pebble, but then I missed it and I kicked the car instead.
Liar!
Since this is an action OVA, you might be wondering how good the fights look. The animation on display here has no right to be as good as it is. My enjoyment was almost as excessive as the violence. And the designs of the demons are terrifying when they're not hilarious. Some of these transformations are so fluid and visceral, but then you have one guy who sprouts a bunch of, appendages? Battle Royale High School isn't for the faint of heart, but if you're on the prowl for some edgy 80s schlock, give it a watch.
Rio, you too? You got a lunch for me? Oh, you want my autograph?
Continuing on with the edgy 80s schlock, we have Megazone 2-3, a 4-episode OVA divided into 3 parts, each with its own director, hence the changes in animation. Part 1 follows Shogo Yahagi, a motorcycle-riding delinquent that unintentionally gets himself wrapped up in a massive conspiracy that changes the very fabric of his life. Society is a lie. The Japan Shogo thought he was living in is actually a recreation controlled by a pop idol AI on a spaceship that left Earth some 500 years ago. And now, the government wants him dead. Megazone 2-3 was initially conceived as a 12-episode series, but due to some sponsors pulling out halfway through production, the existing animation was compiled into an 80-minute OVA with a few additional scenes to make the whole thing coherent. The upside of being an OVA is that the team no longer needed to follow TV regulations. Now don't be fooled by the initial lighthearted appearance of Part 1. There's a Harvey Weinstein reference and some Game of Thrones sexposition. Not to mention the odd skull bursting open and a fully uncensored McDonald's. If you're at all squeamish, you may wish to avert your eyes from this beautifully animated sequence from Part 2, in which the crew of the spaceship are reduced to mincemeat.
The secondary bridge isn't responding either!
The final thing to mention on the visuals, as you have no doubt noticed, is that each part looks drastically different from the others, and the constant redesigns make some of the characters look like entirely new ones. If you can overlook the visual inconsistencies, you're in for a treat, though I will say Part 3 has some additional problems. It's definitely the weakest looking part, not in terms of the aesthetic, but in terms of the animation quality. It also takes place centuries after the events of Part 2, which already ended Yahagi's story in a more or less adequate fashion. There's still merit to watching it if you're interested. If nothing else, it has some quality meme material.
Really? A gamer, huh? It's kinda hot in here.
You got some big industry names involved with this project, probably the most obvious one being Macross's Ishiguro. There is a bit of controversy, if you can even call it that, concerning Megazone 2-3 and The Matrix. I mean, a story about a guy who finds out he's living in a fake world run by an AI that decided to keep civilization stuck in the late 20th century. Plus, the Wachowskis are pretty well-known fans of anime. Did they steal the idea for their most successful movie franchise from Megazone 2-3? Probably not, but if you don't like them, then consider this more ammo, I guess.
Dodge this.
Last thing I want to say is that a reboot is allegedly in the works, so keep your eyes peeled for that one. And in the meantime, maybe give this one a watch.
That's it! To hell with you!
Some girl just came out of my screen!
Yaotomote Uchi is an unloved loser who rents a special VHS designed for fellow genetic dead ends from a mysterious blockbuster on his way home from being cucked. When he slaps that bad boy into the VCR, a beautiful girl leaps from the screen and promises to fulfill Yaota's every desire. But the young man still wants the girl who doesn't want him, so the video girl Ai promises him that she'll do everything in her power to help Yaota find happiness and true love.
The beautiful maiden Ai Amano and the teenage beast. What will become of her in this house of sin?
Listen, I have no love for the little Miss Popular falls for generic loser who gets anxiety from talking to cashiers genre of anime, except for Nagatoro because I'm a race trader. However, I actually like this one. Look, we sidetracked the little Miss Popular problem because I was specifically created to comfort people like Yaota, so her taking an interest in him actually makes sense. I mean, she's basically a 90s VTuber. I'm sorry if that ruins this for you, and I'm even more sorry for you if that just made it better. But anyways, it's not like Yaota doesn't have any redeeming qualities to attract the ladies, it's just that he's such a simp.
Sometimes I wish I loved you instead.
That's rough, buddy.
Unfortunately, this does put Video Girl Ai dangerously close to Rent-A-Girlfriend. However, I'm confident that this one is far better. I've never actually seen Rent-A-Girlfriend before, but you know, old equals good, new equals bad. We've been over this before. This OVA may not be a full-on dumpster fire, but it's still kind of a smoking trash can. I don't know why it's a plot point that Yaota's crappy VCR causes Ai's bosom to retreat, but please believe me when I say, Video Girl Ai is surprisingly wholesome and a little real at times. Yaota and I make for a fun team, and the jokes and banter between the two make every episode worth watching. The animation is pretty solid too, especially for the early 90s. Plus, Ai's a cutie, and I guess Yaota's main crush is too.
I guess you like girls with really big hooters, huh?
One thing on the visuals though, most of the OVA has a fairly simple city pop kind of look, but then towards the end we're treated with some really trippy stuff. It's a shame this one doesn't get more attention, but I guess this way, you get to keep Ai all to yourself.
You're still mad, huh?
I can stay, right?
Guess so.
Pale Cocoon is a short 20-minute OVA about a man who restores and analyzes pieces of data from days long past. Sometimes it's landscapes, other times it's objects. But this time around, it's a person who left a message for the future. Look, you're not watching this one for the story or the characters either. Not saying it's bad, but there's only so much development you can give a cast of 3 in a post-apocalyptic world with a runtime of 20 minutes. Now this one's all about the animation. Pale Cocoon manages to meld 3D backgrounds with 2D characters to phenomenal results. Combine that with a great soundtrack, lifelike camera movements, and a memorable atmosphere, and you got yourself one of the best OVAs from the 2000s. And although the main duo doesn't have too much time to shine, they're still fleshed out enough to make you care. I also like how the dialogue and the interactions between all the cast goes for a more realistic tone, instead of your standard anime hijinks. Following the two leads as they move around this dusty underground facility that is slowly being abandoned by more and more employees as the OVA progresses was enjoyable to say the least. I really dig the vibe of Pale Cocoon, and I imagine I'm not alone.
Who the hell are you?
The name's Raleigh Vincent, bounty hunter.
Oh.
They call me Minnie May.
There, we're all introduced.
Gunsmith Cats has an instrumental opening song, so you already know it's great. Raleigh Vincent and her friend Minnie Mae Hopkins run a slightly illegal gun store in Chicago and get themselves involved with the wrong crowd, the federal government. Bill Collins, a sleazy agent of the Alphabet people, blackmails the girls into helping him with a case. Now the Gunsmith Cats have to work with this ATF dog to bust illegal weapon deals and fight off a crazy Russian assassin. The action goes hard and the characters are written with just the right amount of 90s cheese. Visually, you can spot some minor differences in style depending on the episode, but they all look fantastic. Raleigh and Minnie Mae are a great duo who are a real treat to watch. Raleigh's a level-headed gunslinger who feels more comfortable with a 9mm in her hands than high heels on her feet. And Minnie Mae is the most adorable domestic terrorist I've ever seen. They also have a couple of interesting friends that help them out from time to time. And for a Fed, Collins ain't half bad either.
Isn't it funny how the ATF got here so quickly?
Now that hurt. We're the good guys.
The creator of the series, Kenichi Sonoda, is something of a reverse weeaboo and a gun fanatic. The animation team actually flew out to Chicago to get a feel for Burger Town, America.
To the Japanese, the fact that anyone in America can own and carry a gun is a source of endless fascination.
To be an American, where at least I know I'm free.
The trip did wonders for the OVA because it really does capture the look and feel of this iconic city, from the backgrounds to the soundtrack. There's only 3 episodes of Gunsmith Cats, but it tells its little story and completes the case. If you want more Raleigh and Minnie Mae, then you can always check out the manga. There's also Riding Bean, which is set in the same universe, and I believe a prequel. Bean's a real man's man with a tricked out car used to transport clients out of harm's way. It's got a mostly different cast, but Raleigh's there. Allegedly. Both are good, but if you're gonna choose just one to watch, go with Gunsmith Cats. It's got girls, it's got guns, and it's just a good time.
Hold on!
暗いな。せめて食事の相手は聖書に変えたら。あら、やろうども。
A cyberpunk mercenary and his 2 catgirl strippers break into a hospital to steal some piss. I'm gonna stop describing episode 1 now. Let's just skip to episode 2. Alright, tomboys and tanks. Need I say more? Dominion Tank Police comes in two flavors. The first series is a comedic action anime set in a strange-looking, futuristic world where the police stop crime with tanks. Leona Ozaki is the new girl on the block who does her best to protect her city. And maybe find love along the way? Yeah, there's a little bit of romance in this one. It ain't all explosions and police brutality. There's a well-thought-out love triangle between Leona, her new partner Al, and the tank.
That's rough, buddy.
The world of Dominion is pretty interesting. The residents of Newport City all have to wear masks due to some bacterial cloud that hangs over the city. And the rising crime rate led to the creation of the aforementioned Fast and Loose Police Tank Division, filled with only the most reputable of individuals.
いやいやてめえらこんな真似しやがってそれでもポリゴンなのかよ容疑者にだって人権や黙秘権があんだぞどこにあるんだよ
Anyways, this OVA serves as a prequel to the manga of the same name created by a guy you probably recognize, Masamune Shiro. If you don't know that name, how about Ghost in the Shell? Shiro wrote Tank Police a few years prior to his most iconic series. While Dominion is certainly more comedic than Ghost in the Shell, even the manga, towards the end we do get a little exploration into the human condition and whatnot. The Ghost in the Shell connection only gets stronger with the sequel OVA. We even see the trademark spider tank. We also see a change in animation. Dominion 1 came out at the tail end of the 80s, while Dominion 2 dropped in the early 90s. Despite certain redesigns and a slight change in tone, this is a sequel to Part 1. There's a new conspiracy going on in Newport, and it's up to Leona and her friends to set things right. New Dominion has a much bigger focus on action and political drama, though it doesn't take itself too seriously. The police aren't nonchalantly torturing suspects or unironically advocating for atomic weapons anymore, but they still engage in a moderate amount of tomfoolery. Both series have their merits. Personally, I found Part 1 to have some of my favorite interactions, but Part 2 has a more meaningful arc for our leading lady and honestly a better soundtrack. Style-wise, I still think Part 1 wins out, but that's just my taste. Maybe I'm just a little bummed Leona went from a redhead to a brunette. No offense. Altogether, you're getting 10 episodes of greatness and a couple new waifus to simp over. There are a lot of OVA out there, old, obscure, or otherwise, so if the people demand it, we can do this song and dance again. Comment below with some more OVA that fit the bill, and also tell me if there was any on this list that you never heard of before. And until next time, Ave Maria, Deus Volt, and do ONA count as OVA? Who can say?